Okay. Here, 1 second. There we go. Okay. Hope the sound's on. There we go. Sound is on. So that is good. Post, profile, and retweet. There we are. Okay, so as you might, okay, well, let's holy shit. Let's wait a little bit, huh? I'm gonna wait a little bit for people to get in here. Things are moving the way they should move. Okay, what we got over Europe right now? Ain't that serious of a night? Ain't really nothing going on other than the fucking usual. And we're gonna take a look at that deep state map because there's been some massive advancements I want to talk about. Some things that seems quite interesting, but more on that in a second here. Not a lot of planes over the U.S. really, and quite of a uninteresting day. No, I guess it is kind of an uninteresting developments. I'm gonna get right into it again here. We are back at it. Nana, welcome in. Welcome in. So, Finland wants to build a TNT plant amid shortage of shells. Currently, there is only one such plant in the EU in Poland, and it's unable to handle all the others. Finland's defense minister said that if allied countries make a quick decision, production could begin in a year or two. So, one of these things that I always find funny about these decisions that we make nowadays in the EU or in general, pretty much anywhere, it's the factor of take a look at how Russia does things, right? Your words you when it's quiet. It's too quiet sometimes, Nana. It's too quiet. That's the problem. Yeah. But it's one of the things I want to talk about, right? Is that if you want to beat Russia, you have to adopt a Russian tactic. And what I'm saying here is that, you know, in a year or two, having built a TNT plant because you have a shortage of shells now, right? You have a shortage of shells in 2024, right? That means that you are at a certain level of where you say we don't have enough to fight a war. I mean, that's a shortage of shells, right? We don't have enough to fight a prolonged war. So for them to say that the production could start in a year or two, I mean, it's just, you know, Finland defense minister says that the allied country make a quick decision as well, like quick, you know, make a quick decision. Production could start in a year or two. A quick, you know, for me that just seems, you know, I understand that there are, you know, things that needs to be built. Sorry, but a year or two, because you have to build a TNT plant, is a very prolonged amount of time, especially if you're fighting a war. I mean, what Europe really needs to do is transfer its economy into a wartime economy, and then focus solely on building military and plants and productions like this. If they really want to survive doing this war, which we all know is coming. I mean, there will be some sort of war, or at least in the prolonged era of war, there will be some kind of proxy war going on. There's already proxy wars in the Middle East and everywhere else, right? So one of the things, yeah, 2 years. 2 years, Nana. Imagine here if I was to say we're going to war tomorrow, and then the EU came out and said, "Well, listen, guys, we have a shortage of shells. We'd be ready to build more shells. Not even no, they're not going to be ready to build more shells. They will have enough. They will built TNT that can be used to build shells. it better be one hell of a large TNT factory, because holy shit. I mean, if you're fighting a war, imagine if the United States during World War II said that they were going to build a tank factory and they'd had it done, and they're going to have it done, in 2 years. That wouldn't work. In the United States during World War II, they'd have a tank factory done in a month or less, and they'd be spitting out tanks already. So this is, the things that I'm talking about here that we're currently doing wrong in not only just in the EU. I'm seeing a shift in the thinking way, but I'm also thinking about like the United States, Canada, a lot of the countries who are pledging their alliances towards Ukraine or Israel, or countries who have to have enough stuck as to not only fight in different areas, in different arenas. The United States who are saying that they have shortages of shells or things like that. And then they are saying, oh, we'll have enough time to get ready to build a shell factory in 2 years. Yeah, but that's the problem, is that if you were to go to war, United States, right, and there'd be a war in the Asian scenery, and there'd be a war in Europe. Very likely, and this is what I'm pointing out here as well. Sorry that I'm talking a bit about this too long, maybe. But if China was to go to war with, the United States in the Asian theater, I think Europe has to realize that the United States is going to prioritize China, okay? The United States will not be sending troops to Europe. And the amount of troops that they will be sending to Europe will be very, very scattered. And that's not because the United States doesn't want to defend us, but the United States is going to have to fight China with 1.2 billion people, and Europe is expected to be able to take on Russia, which, by the way, as a military point of view, is very likely that Europe will be able to take on Russia by themselves. But it does mean that Europe has to stop thinking, because they're thinking right now, right, is we have more people. Yeah, okay, you have more people. That's great. But that's the whole thinking they have. We have more people. What about we have more tanks? We have more ships. We have more, planes. Because what they're thinking is that they're saying to you, 86, welcome in. What they're saying to you, Nana, 86. I don't know how old you guys are, but if you have children, and if you have children for the future, they're saying to you that in the future, when we do go to war, they don't want to spend their money now. They don't want to have to do right now, build tanks. What they want to do is just bet on the factor that we have more people. So they're willing to say, we can easily sacrifice maybe 100 million people, and then we win the war. Yeah, because we have more people. Okay, great. I'm just saying, like, it's their thinking that's completely, utterly ridiculous. We have access to the most amount of iron and products that you've seen since the birth of human Christ. I don't even know what that meant, but but like, yeah, 58 years old. Well, I don't know. You have grandchildren, Nana, or just children. But it's going to be your children, or children's, your grandson, that's going to be fighting. And your government is telling you that we can win this war because we have more numbers. But I'd like them to say we will win this war because we have better equipment and we can build more equipment faster than what Russia can. So if we were to win, if we want to win this war, which is in Italy, I have 2 grandchildren. Well, there you go, right, Nana? And that's what I think sometimes is ridiculous, that they're thinking, oh yeah, let's go out on the public scene and tell all these mothers and grandparents that their children are going to go to war because they're going to fight for the human spirit. What the fuck is this idea that we're going to fight for a country? I'd think that I like to fight for my country, but I would also like to have the notion of thinking that I'm not just throwing myself at a line. I mean, that was wrong. That was what was wrong with the. I'd be worried about their future too. Definitely. I mean, unless we equip a Russian tactic, which, by the way, when I say a Russian tactic, I know a lot of people are thinking, okay, so we are going to throw men at the line. No, I'm saying the amount of equipment that Russia is spewing out right now. If we can do, okay, if we can do what Russia does with the amount of equipment and things that they're spitting out, but do it in the way that the United States and EU is doing, which means quality, quality and good equipment, and do it in quantities that outmatches the Russians, then we're gonna win a war easily. But it's like they don't realize how simple it is, because most of the government's problems, and I've seen this. This is something that happens everywhere, even in Denmark. They have a problem, and the problem is that they think they have to overcomplicate everything. They don't just simplify things. They don't just go, okay, well, listen, we're better, okay? Let's go talk to the guys who knows what they're doing, who has experience in building, who built tanks for a living. Talk to these guys. Let's talk, what do we need to do for you guys to be able to spit out 100 tanks a month or 100 tanks a week, What do we need to do? That's what we need to do. So I'm just saying, if you all want to, do something, tell your governments to stop overcomplicating things and start simplifying things and doing a little bit of a rhetoric. Because, and I can point this out again here, if I'm going on to Ukraine. This is the latest battle update. Now, we haven't taken a look at these for a while, so let's take a look at it. The problem that we're having here is the United States have sort of went behind on their equipment promises, and also Europe has. Because, again, I'm pointing out what I'm saying. This is the exact thing that happens. This is what happens when Europe lags behind on their commitment to do anything. When Europe becomes too lazy or does things overcomplicate things. This is Russians. This is the Russians with their meager equipment who have taken, look at that massive chunk there. And look at this right here, this advance here, which is an absolutely bullshit advance. This is, and there would have been an ability to crash through this front right here, because look at how thin some of the line was at one point. I mean, if you had enough equipment, you could have blasted through that and caught these guys behind enemy lines. But if you had enough equipment like that one right there, you could have blasted through that. I mean, there's a big chunk of soldiers right here, because there has to be, because they're doing advance, but Ukraine doesn't have it, because we keep telling them, oh, we don't have it for you, we don't have the tanks. If they had enough infantry, and they had enough heavy infantry, which is tanks and artillery, they could have blasted through that easily. Especially if it was NATO tanks. They could have. Look at the thin line right there. Look at the amount of soldiers who are very likely right here. Look at the thin line right there. I mean, we're talking, the amount of line that they have to protect right here, 1.81 kilometers. And these soldiers right here, I don't know how experienced they are. They're very likely the most experienced, but, this is where they're holding, right? And this is the city that they're holding. And now it's too late, because now they're fortified. They're inside the city, right? But if they had enough artillery shells, if they had enough things to be able to blast their way right into these guys right here, if they had enough, right? But they don't. They don't have enough. Ukraine doesn't have enough. And this happens. This is the reason what happens here. This is what's been happening, This is the latest involvement here, and you can just see how much they're pushing, especially right here. This is them trying to take another city here along the river. But I don't know what they are, because I don't read Ukrainian. But, I mean, this is ridiculous, because this is not a very clever way of advancing, because the reason why I'm saying that is because you have to think about how does one advance this, how does one ensure that every single flank of this exact corridor is properly protected, especially when you think about the Russians, think about their logistics possibilities, think about how bad they are doing really anything. You're giving them enough time to be able to learn how to do something. And that's what Europe and the rest of the world has done. They've given the Russians enough time to do what they did in World War I, World War II, and well, not really World War II, but World War II especially, and on later wars, Russia always struggles to start with. You can look at any example. World War II, especially, the Russians were struggling against the Germans, and eventually they weren't, because they're just throwing so much they were throwing a lot of people against the line. And it's just a Russian tactic, is that they always struggle to start with and then do really well in the end. But the way to do really well is just throwing everything they have at one enemy, and then they don't care about the exact numbers, or they don't care about production values. They don't care about, it's just production. It's just doing things. So what we're seeing here is the exact thing that we're going to be worried about in the future as well. They're talking about the fears of, the latest fear that NATO has is definitely that the Russians are wanting to gather soldiers to be able to take the Baltics. Now, this won't happen before Ukraine falls, or that there's a ceasefire of some sort here in or some kind of surrender from Ukrainians, blah blah blah, right? How long will that last? It's not a considerable amount of advancements they've made. There's obviously a lot of time left of this war. This war could be a very prolonged war still, but if we don't come up with enough abilities and stop lagging behind like we are, if we keep doing it the Finnish way, keep like the Finland is doing right now, building a factory in 1 to 2 years, You're telling me that the next time that Ukraine will be able to receive shells from anybody, or especially Europe, would be when in 1 to 2 years, because we have a shortage. That means that in 1 to 2 years, when we're finally done building that factory, or that TNT factory, they won't be there. Ukraine in itself won't be there. But who will be there? Russians. You know why? Because they don't care about the proper values of building these things. They don't care about, they don't care about, and one of the things that we care about is obviously making sure that people still have a life. And that's a good thing, right? One of the things Russians don't care about is the factor of the quality of the people, right? Because they just do stuff, don't care about the quality of the people. And that's one thing that Europe has to balance. We have to balance quality of the life of people, right? And then also the production. But that means if we want to do this, we have to go into a wartime economy, which means focusing solely on production, which will have a positive effect on the public in many ways. Look at the amount of wars that is brewing all over the world. So if we are to start producing more, it's not going to have a negative effect on people. It won't have a negative effect on people. One thing it will have a negative effect on, probably the public sector. The amount of people who work for daycares and stuff like that. You shouldn't be expecting pay raises lately, because if we are to do this, there will be some shortages or cuts on other areas. But it's for me sometimes I just it's like, is it worth the sacrifice? I think so, but it's also, we have to ensure that people have enough to eat, keep inflation low, and there's a possibility for that. We just need to put our brains together and do it. Our economy is fragile, but we can't solely focus on making sure that our economy survives, because there has to be a tomorrow. I'd rather have a little bit less of money than be dead, or live in a fucking wasteland because we didn't, or live under Russian rule. I'd rather have the ability to be fighting back. So we have to ask ourselves sometimes, we're willing to fucking sacrifice some things to be able to do something else. Now, I've been looking at something, so take a look at that right there. What is that? I've been looking at that. I think it's some kind of massive lighting rig, but it looks like it just looks massive. I don't know what it is. Like some kind of massive lighting rig. Seems a little weirdo. Oh, we got a Moscow, Russia camera as well. From this guy as well, same wavelength. These are in the descriptions if you guys are wondering. Live streams are in the description below here. So yeah, Sorry about that. A lot of talking. Okay, so lately there's been a lot of Russian infiltration inside the European mines. If you go around in the city that I live in, which is the second biggest city in Denmark, there's a lot of posters lately that has been saying, "Are you a communist?" Um, like there's a lot of posters that are like, "Oh, are you a communist? Then organize yourself." There are actual posters saying this. So, but one of the things that the Danish do, well, we just rip it down, because you're not allowed to be a communist in Denmark, which is like by law. So, don't know why they're doing it, but okay. I don't think you can get arrested for it, but I tell you what, if I ever do get to decide something, the one thing I will decide is that if you decide to have communist or Nazi affiliation or some kind of fascist affiliation, listen up, buddy. I'm gonna get you arrested because I don't give a fuck. I don't care. Fuck those guys. You know. Yeah. Nick, welcome in. Welcome in. It's been a long time. Yeah. One thing that I want to, I've seen a lot of 15-year-olds, 16-year-olds who are like on the internet talking about how they like what the communists did and how they're like they're communists and all that stuff. It's like, how are you 15, 16 years old and think you know what a communist does or likes? You think it's the same thing when people think about like their life in the future. They're like, oh, it's going to be so great. There's going to be so many things. And then they're going to end up sitting at a desk working, in this shitty ass job that they thought was going to be the greatest in the world. That's basically communism. You think it's going to be great because you've looked at the things, you've looked at the greatness. You've looked at the tanks, and you think, oh, this part of something bigger, right? But then in the end of the day, you're either gonna get killed because at the end of the day you're gonna speak out your mind because you think communism is this area where you can just say whatever the fuck you want. People who, people don't understand what happened during the communist era. I mean, millions. I'm not talking just a few thousand. I'm talking millions. We're talking about 40 million people that we know of because of Stalin and communism got killed. So 40 million people, that's approximately, what's that, 5, 10, 15, 20, that's 8 times the population of Denmark. So 8 times over, Stalin killed Denmark, the whole entire population. So that's a lot. Crazy. It's crazy how people are, they're just uninformed nowadays. They really are. So, one thing I want to talk about here is this right here, for example, as well. European intelligence agencies have warned their government that Russia is plotting violent acts of sabotage across the continent as it commits to a course of permanent conflict with the West. Financial Times. Already in Germany, Great Britain, Estonia, fuck, that's Czech Republic, I think. I think it's, something like that. And Sweden. So Russia has, Russia has already begun to move to more actively prepare covert bombing, arson attack, and damage infrastructure on European soil, directly and via proxies. Little apparent concern on causing civilian fatalities, intelligence officials believe. So what we are looking at here is that the Kremlin is becoming, an Iran on a much larger scale. They're sponsoring terrorism across the continent of Europe. So here's what we do. Let's build a big fucking wall. Here's what I propose. Let's get Donald Trump, right? We just get Donald Trump over here and we tell him, I know you want to build a wall. Why don't you build a massive fucking wall right here, right next to Russia? Huh? Don't let anything or anyone from Russia in. I don't care if they're fucking migrants. I don't care if they're who. Okay? Can't trust anything from Russia. Sorry, but you can't. Don't stop fucking letting them in. You fucking, oh yeah, let me let these Russian migrants in because they're from Russia, right? I mean, they didn't know that Russia is a terrorist. They sponsor terrorism. I'm not going to sit here and say that every migrant is a terrorist. They're not. But how can we really know that when Russia is trying to sponsor terrorism, and then we have Middle Eastern or migrants from Russia moving from Russia into the Western Hemisphere? How can we trust that? So I'm just saying, let's stop being so fucking stupid and build a big fucking wall. You know, keep the Russians out. So yeah, I say we build a big fucking wall. Let's fucking do it. Why not? Ah. U.S. State Department reminded Georgian authorities who is dragging them into the war. It is Russia that is dragging Georgia into the war in Ukraine. Russia is starting to build a giant military port in the territory of Georgia. It occupies, so I can't pronounce that. Abkhazia adaptations and sometimes adoption. Fuck it, whatever. Sometimes murders of Georgian citizens continue. Russia continues to occupy the territory, said U.S. Assistant Secretary Jim O'Brien. Now, if you're wondering about exactly where is this, so it's not the Georgia in the United States. It's the Georgia here in the Middle Eastern area, or the underbelly of Russia here. So this area right here was taken in 2008, as you can see. This is Russian. This is also from 2008, Russian. And this one right here, which is from 1995. I think they did it once. I think they invaded in 1995, and then they did it again here in 2009. I think it was the same campaign as this one, but I think it was, yeah. I'm not too knowledgeable about these areas, but it's quite a large chunk of area that they've taken out of Georgia. So these are all Russian occupied. Now, what they're saying is that they're building some sort of, I imagine it's this one, maybe also that one, but I imagine, or that one. I really don't know a lot about this, but in these three areas, or at least one of these areas, they're building quite a lot of military presence. And Georgia, who is not a very large country, who doesn't have a very large economy, have sort of become a little bit afraid of what Russia, is thinking of doing, which is quite, sensible, because Georgia, who is not an EU member, who's not a NATO member, have, become increasingly afraid of, is Russia gonna take some more of our territory? Is Russia gonna, fuck us over in this one? Is Russia gonna do something? So it's also funny because this area right here, which is Russian territory, this was also taken from Georgia. So look at that, it is Russian territory now, but it was also taken from Georgia. That territory right there. So Georgia has a GDP of 24 billion, which is, to put in perspective, Moldova, which has the worst economy in the EU, is at 14 billion. So 24 billion as a GDP, which it's on the way up, much like any other country here, which is great. But it's not on the way up as well as it. So, and it hit low points down here definitely, but it's certainly on its way up now to a much better economy. It's doing pretty great, and it's seeing a massive increase in its GDP, but it's not going to be enough because its military size, which, has an active personnel of 37,000 and reserve personnel of 27,000. So it's about what a little bit above 60,000. Well, above that actually, 74. 74,000. No, 64,000. What the fuck? I got to count there. 64,000. That's right. Right? Yeah. So, um, yeah, it's not a lot, and although it is quite a lot, and I imagine that Georgia will be able to resist some sort of an assault. It depends on how big of an assault Russia is willing to commit, or if they're ever going to commit any assault. I think really what Russia is fearing again is the exact same scenario that we're seeing in Ukraine. It's the scenario of Georgia is talking to EU about becoming an EU member, and Georgia is also talking to NATO about becoming a NATO member. And both those two, I mean, the EU membership is not really not that much of a red line for Russia, but it's in the same way it is. You know, it's sort of because Russia wants to de-Westify the Middle Eastern hemisphere, which is very successful in doing. But Georgia is definitely one of the holdouts when it comes to this. So, you know, uh, we don't want to do anything to ensure a war there, because it also, I think Georgia does have some sort of cooperation with the United States, but it's not directly a. It's just not a security pact. Not one that I think the United States will take too seriously. And also, I don't think if the United States wishes to conduct a war with Russia here, it is unlikely as to what Russia would like to do here. Will Russia, in the near future, like to expand the war in Ukraine? Not only just in Ukraine, but the rest of Europe? Likely, yeah. When? Don't know. Probably somewhere within 2060. Not 2060, 2026, maybe? I don't know. It depends on how fast Ukraine is lost. You know, if the United States or EU doesn't get very serious about giving what Ukraine needs, we're gonna look at a war scenario here very very soon. So we're looking at it definitely, and Georgia is definitely on the list of the Russian war ideology. So axis. Georgia doesn't have. I mean, when you think about it, Georgia doesn't have any allies. It doesn't have any strong neighbors that's willing to help it. It doesn't have, because its neighbors are Azerbaijan and Armenia. So, and those guys are about to go to war. Azerbaijan is about to go to war against Armenia. That hasn't kicked off yet, has it? I mean, I think there was some talk about that, but I don't know if it's kicked off. I've been off a little bit, but yeah. So quite a lot. And they're obviously wanted to go to war, so it's sort of kept between two war scenes, because it's kept here in the Caucasus where there's constant war, and right underneath it has Iran. Yeah, so it's not really able to go anywhere. I mean, it has Turkey, obviously. It could, not likely it's going to be able to rely on Turkey. Don't know if they have very much of a. I mean, I suppose they have a strong neighbor, Turkey. Turkey's quite strong, but they're a NATO member. Will they get involved? Unknowingly. It could be possible, because I don't know if Turkey wants Russia as its neighbor, direct neighbor. So yeah. Because if Russia takes Georgia, I mean, that's a clear scene directly into Turkey. So, well, this is sort of a buffer zone for Turkey. So, will Turkey want Russia as its neighbor? Hard to say, really, because Turkey is kind of like an on-defense kind of country when it comes to NATO and Western culture. But yeah, it's a long talk. Keep going on. Anyways, I'm gonna take a little bit of a break here. It's a long video here, but this is Zelensky. This Easter, we are united in prayer. So this is Zelensky here talking to you guys. Pretty cool video here. So 8 minutes, by the way, so buckle up.
Великий народе великої України. Ми відзначаємо сьогодні велике свято – Воскресіння Господнє, Великдень. Великдень символізує звільнення душі людини від рабства, зла і темряви, перемогу добра і справедливості, перемогу життя над смертю. За все це ми боремось 802 дні поспіль. 802 дні, коли воля протистоїть мороку, доблесть протидіє терору. 802 дні нашого спротиву, які можна описати словами з Євангелія від Іоанна. А світло у темряві світить, і темрява не обгорнула його. Ці ж слова присвячені одній з виставок Софійського собору, де я знаходжусь зараз. Вона та інші роботи різних українських митців разом несуть в собі глибокий сенс. Це ікони на ящиках від боєприпасів, розсочені димом нашої землі й духом нашого народу. Символи великих випробувань та великої сили, яка допомагає нам їх долати. Кожна з цих ікон немов божественний прояв, доказ того, що небо з нами, відповідь на питання, чому українці вистояли. Бо у найважчих обставинах і найтемніші часи ми здатні народжувати світло. На опалених вогнем і горем дошках зі змучених стражданнями українських міст та сіл, поєднуючи, на перший погляд, несумісне війну і Господа, перемагаючи зло вірою, перемагаючи біду надією. Вдивившись у ці ікони, можна зрозуміти почуття усього нашого народу, дзеркало, яке відображає нашу дійсність у часи війни. І вже пройдений шлях, і цей Великдень, і усе наше сьогодення. Саме так сьогодні виглядають наші обереги. Саме так сьогодні ми відчуваємо Бога, який захищає нас руками наших воїнів. Саме так ми бачимо заступництво небесних сил, втілене у силах безпеки і оборони України. Кожного українця і кожної українки, які віддають себе священній справі, оборона рідної землі від темряви і зла. На цих іконах імена героїв, які віддали життя, аби нас захистити, які показали, українці стають на коліна лише у молитві і ніколи перед загарбниками і окупантами. Біблія вчить нас любові до ближнього, а сьогодення показало нам справжнє значення цього слова. Коли навіть за сотні кілометрів один від одного ми підтримуємо, допомагаємо один одному, захищаємо один одного, молимось один за одного, коли всі ми стали один одному ближчими, один одному ближніми. А колишній сусід, що постійно набивався нам у брати, для нас далекий навіки. Він порушив всі заповіді, зажадав наш дім, прийшов нас вбивати. Світ бачить це, Бог знає це. І ми віримо у Бога на плечі шеврон з українським прапором. Тож з таким союзником життя точно переможе смерть. Долаючи спільний шлях, відчуваючи спільний біль, всіх нас об'єднує сьогодні одна спільна молитва за всіх наших бійців, що зустрічають Великдень в окопах і на позиціях, за наших воїнів світла, які стримують демонів на всіх напрямках, за тих, хто дотримується у житті ще однієї заповіді – захищати Україну, за те, щоб всі вони повертались живими. За всіх наших цивільних людей, які щодня важко, дуже важко працюють, аби держава була міцною, аби успішно долала нечисту. За тих, хто живе і працює для цього. За всіх наших дітей, не за віком мужніх хлопчиків та дівчаток, у яких Росія вкрала дитинство, але які, попри все, не розучились посміхатися і вірити в диво, за всіх наших матерів і батьків, у яких забрали щасливу, спокійну старість, та які, попри все, тримаються, піклуються про нас. За всі наші міста і села, які повинні відчувати Господню благодать, а не постійний терор зла, над якими нависли чорні хмари і летять бомби і ракети тих, кому місце в пеклі, а не в українському небі. За наші землі, наших людей, чий дух не зламати, пам'ятаючи слова, які написані у Софії над Орантою, які справдилися у нашому житті. Бог серед міста, і воно не похитнеться. Бог допоможе йому перед світанком. Сьогодні наша молитва за всіх українців, які чекають саме цього світанку і неодмінно побачать його, дочекаються миру, правди і Бога, який повернеться на випалену землю, всіяну шрамами у вигляді воронок і траншей. Повернеться тишею, спокоєм, квітами замість мін на полях. Повернеться дитячим сміхом замість реву повітряної тривоги. Світло, яке повернеться на всю нашу Господом дану землю, на всі території, які чортами тимчасово окуповані. Бог повернеться в Маріуполь, на терикони, узбережжя морів. Так завжди було. Так точно буде. Я вірю в це щодня, а особливо в цей великий день у цьому великому місці, історія якого нагадує ні ординська навала, ні нацистська окупація, ні російський терор не зможуть стерти нас з лиця землі. Нехай небеса зміцнюють нашу волю у битві проти неволі, дадуть мужність для нових здобутків і мудрість, аби цінувати все, що вже здобули, силу, щоб зберегти єдність, єдність, щоб примножити силу. І нехай всім, хто віддав життя за Україну, Бог подарує вічний спокій їхнім душам і вічний мир їхнім нащадкам, усім нашим дітям та онукам, усім нашим майбутнім поколінням, які мають святе право знати, що таке мирний Великдень у мирній Україні. Сьогодні ми молимось за це і боремось за це, а світло у темряві світить. Зі святом усіх вас, дорогі українці, Христос воскрес, воістину воскрес.
Probably pure fucking goal right there. Oh, goal. Slava Ukraina. I feel like it's a long time and anybody's ever said that. Slava Ukraina. This is a good goddamn time to say it. Okay, let me find somebody. I wish you see if he had uploaded anything, because we want to go check out what they have for us today. The problem that I'm having is that they used to be called Flash News, but now they're called something else. Is it this person? Sometimes I wonder if it's not. It's not that guy. Somebody else. I followed him a long time ago. Oh, there he is. Yeah. So, changed name, and I'll be honest with you, I don't know. I can't remember that. So, you know, but they have a video here. Shelling of Ukrainian cities. This is the daily news of the 3rd of the 5th. So it's not directly today, which is today. It's the 6th of May. This one's a bit of an old one, but I reckon we haven't really seen a lot. And usually he doesn't upload anything. If anything has happened, he will upload a new one. So this is sort of the latest, blah 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 stuff. So this wasn't heard in Sumi again. So a lot of stuff going on in Sumi region today. Push up here, but we'll watch this one and then we'll be right back with some more news after that. So enjoy that one.
З двох сторін чи вхід-вихід? Так бить його. Обезбавлення буде.
One thing I just want to point out about the factor is here, there's a reason why you don't take people who can't see shit in a war. Now, I don't know if you guys have ever been, a human being before, but I don't know if any of you have been to war. I haven't. But I've watched a lot of documentaries, and every single documentary, they always mention one thing. If you can't really see the enemy, how the fuck are you going to shoot him? Now, I understand that you are able to bring glasses and combat glasses that sits tight on your face. So it might not be that big of a problem, but I wouldn't go too far when it comes to this, because an effective soldier is not a soldier who can't see past, 1 meter. So I'm just saying, I wouldn't go too far with this, but I understand that they need soldiers. Just saying. Починаємо обшук.
А що вже є?
There you go. So, yeah, good stuff. Now, I'm not gonna be. I'm just gonna point this out here. Anybody who's Italian, I'm sorry, but Jesus, I would not want to buy anything that said "Made in Italy" on it. I'm sorry. Okay, I've watched too many World War II documentaries to know anything made that says "Made in Italy" is not viable for so-called military action. Okay? I'm sorry. But it probably is. I still trust it. It says made in Germany, I'll trust it. If the packaging says made in Germany, I'll use it every day. If it says made in Italy, that's a gift for someone else. Sorry about that, but it's just being honest with you guys. Just being honest. You know, have you ever seen Italian electronics? I mean, it's like they don't really care. It's like they just want to go home. You know, it's like blah blah blah. In nature, let's go on. You know.
And the other. This whole thing is the most repulsive, disgusting thing happening, and the American people are the ones writing the check. And I absolutely hate everybody here that is doing this. I mean, I seriously hate them for doing this to the American people and paying for the murder and slaughter of people in Ukraine.
Look at that right there. Look at that. What people, right? Like, is it the people? Are you talking about the Russians that are attacking the Ukrainians? How dare you pay for Ukraine to kill the Russians? You know, like if you don't want the Russians to die, tell the Russians to go home.
This whole thing is the most repulsive,
oh my God, it's so repulsive.
Disgusting thing happening, and the American people are the ones writing the check. And
American people, I want to write the check, and I care about the American people because every statement I ever make is always about the American people. I love the American people. Can't you see to my face that I've spent all your tax money on Botox? You can't tell me that she is the age that she is, which we all know she ain't fucking 20 years old.
And I absolutely
look at her
hate
fucking face.
Everybody here.
You don't get that. Okay? You don't get that from naturality. You get that from a lot of taxpayers' Botox fucking injections. Okay? She's a senator, right? She's a senator or House representative, U.S. House representative. So she uses taxpayers' money to get Botox. Okay. But you think... what? But you think helping Ukraine defeat the Russians is what? Bad? I mean, you probably use more money on your fucking cheeks than we've used on fucking Ukraine. Jesus Christ. I bet it's...
that is doing this. I mean, I seriously hate them for doing this to...
Yeah, I think she needs an EpiPen because she looks a bit puffed up, doesn't she? And she looks puffed up, doesn't she? I mean, let's be honest here. She looks like she just needs an EpiPen. Like, she looks like somebody just, like a bee stung her.
The American people and paying for the murder and slaughter of people in Ukraine. Vladimir Putin has not said he wants to go march across Europe and take Europe. And
when has he not said that? When? Show me one time Putin hasn't told us that he would annihilate us, that he would drop nuclear bombs on us. What?
The reality is Ukraine is not even a NATO member nation. But if you want to know something, Lloyd Austin and the others here, more than anything, want to send your uncles, your cousins, and your sons and daughters to the front lines in Ukraine, because that is the only country that for some weird, sick and evil reason that they care about.
Sick and weird reason? What? What? Who the fuck has ever said that U.S. soldiers was going into Ukraine? Who has ever said that? The only reason that there would be any U.S. soldiers going into Ukraine would be if Russia decided to attack the EU. You know. By the way, I mentioned this earlier as well. There won't be any U.S. soldiers in the United States. Sorry, there won't be any U.S. soldiers in the EU. If Russia decides to attack the EU, China will 100% jump on the opportunity to attack Taiwan. Let's be honest. If that happens, there won't be any U.S. soldiers in the EU. Okay? Because where else would there be a lot of U.S. soldiers? There'd be a lot of U.S. soldiers in the Asian scenery of war. Theater of war. David, welcome in. But there won't be any U.S. soldiers in Ukraine for a very long time or ever. So I just don't think. Yeah, I'm sorry, but I just don't think that's something that's going to happen. Because you have to take opportunities. Like, she says she likes China, She constantly goes around saying how China is not the threat. Even though the only threat to U.S. existence at this point would be the rising of China. Right? So I'm just, yeah. Speaking of China, Xi Jinping will visit France, Serbia, and Hungary. So Xi Jinping will be in Europe for the first time in 5 years. So, interesting. Okay, look at that. So, Ukraine's planning a new counteroffensive, Solomon. After receiving $61 billion from the U.S. military aid, Ukraine will launch a new counteroffensive in 2025. So, there you go. To keep Russia from gaining additional advantages this year. This was stated by the U.S. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan. Okay, so in half a year, in 2025, they're gonna make additional gains. They're gonna stop Russia from making additional gains. So in half a year, they're gonna stop Russians. But for the next half a year, there will still be advancements. Right. Sounds like a healthy plan. What? The U.S. put a hold on ammunition shipments to Israel. The Biden administration last week put a hold to shipments on U.S.-made ammunition to Israel. Two Israeli officials told IX or whatever. It is the first time since the October 7th attack that the U.S. has stopped its weapons shipment intended for Israel's military. I'll tell you why. Maybe because you're still a fucking war with somebody you've defeated a long time ago, I mean, one thing I don't get is the factor that clearly the Gaza is defeated, and yet clearly they are asking for more to do what? More war, right? So yeah. So there were, okay, I don't know if you guys heard, but earlier today there were some people that have been talking about how, so this is the tweet here, so France already deployed its military to Ukraine. So former Assistant Deputy Secretary of Defense Stephen Bryan said that 100 artillerymen reconnaissance officers from the 3rd Infantry Regiment were recruited into the advanced group. This is only the first tranche of approximately 1,500,000 1,500 soldiers of the French Foreign Legion who arrived in Ukraine. Many people have posted this message. Decide it for yourself whether you believe it or not. I think it's very unlikely. And there you go as well. France sends combat troops to Ukraine battlefront. It is a fake news. It is a fake news, guys. There is not any soldiers of any legion other than legions of their own. Because they're all the only foreign soldiers who have set foot or is fighting in Ukraine is unaffiliated soldiers who have volunteered out of their own free will to go fight in Ukraine. So just want to point that out. It is not, and I repeat again, true. There is no French soldiers affiliated with the French military in Ukraine fighting against Russians. The only foreign soldiers fighting Ukraine are those who have gone there out of their own free will and their own decisions to go there. They're not affiliated to countries. But yeah. That's you know, so that's what we're saying. That's what I'm saying. So, you know, that's a true message that don't believe everything you see on the internet. True message here from the boring history table. Don't believe everything you see on the internet. Israel wants to finish Rafah. Well, that's fair enough that they want to do that, but I don't think they need any more U.S. help to finish Rafah, do they? I mean, it's not like, you know, it's not like there's a lot left to fight in Rafah. You know, this idea that them asking more U.S. help is like, you know, I mean, how much really do you need to fight like these Gaza soldiers who are fighting inside of this little area here? How much possibly can they have left? I mean, I'm just being honest. How much possibly can they have left? You know, it's like there are other countries right now, which, you know, Ukraine, who could use the ammunition to more useful purposes to fight a much larger enemy. You know, so yeah. And that's true, you know. Yeah, I think yeah. So, but look at this, you know. This is like Vicegrad nowadays. So Vicegrad is like a mass news channels, and this is what they do all the time. They're like 77% of all assault rape cases on Paris streets were committed by foreigners in 2023. These worrying figures recorded by the Paris police headquarters called into question the authority able to keep women safe. So yeah, retreat. But this is the only thing Vicegrad does nowadays. You know, this massive news channel, they're very anti-immigration, you know. Don't get me wrong. Am I anti-immigration? At the current moment, I'm not very in favor of continuing to let everyone that we see into our nations. I believe there has to be a limiter on who we let into the nation. And also, I believe that we have to be able to provide jobs for everyone. And first of all, should focus on providing jobs for those who already live in the country, and not focus on being able to provide jobs for people who don't even live in the country yet. So I'm sorry that I'm a little bit of a stauncher believer that you know, people living in our country should have the ability to have jobs in the country that they were born in. You know, but you know, I mean, and at the second time, I understand that you can't live in a country of war, which is also why I am very against, you know, the U.S., the Denmark especially sending troops or fighting in the Middle East in general. I don't believe fighting in the Middle East is going to gain much for anybody, but you know, whatever. So, whatever. I mean, you know, call me whatever you want. But I stick by it. It's just the way it is, guys. It's just the way it is. Okay. Well, ain't look like there's much else to go on right now. Okay. Well, I don't really have anything else. I think we gone through what I had to talk about. And really, there's really anything else going on today other than that. So you go back in the video a bit to hear what I talked about. But yeah, I'm pretty much done now. But yeah. So have a good night, guys. I'm gonna get out of here. We've been live for an hour. So have a good time, have a good day, have a good whatever time it is for you. I'll see you guys some other time, maybe tomorrow. I'm thinking I'm going back to streaming a bit more regular. So have a good time.